Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm Paige. I'm an alcoholic. And where we're going to be picking up today is on page 59. And we didn't make it all the way through the 12 steps reading them last week. So where we left off last week was on step 4, which I will let you know, not a good place to stop when we're in real life. But I ran out of time. So we're going to be picking right up page 59 at step 5. So step 5, it says, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. And the first thing I want to point out is that word admitted, because there's more than one way to look at the word admit or admitted. Now, the first is a bit of a confession, and that's often how we sort of view the 5th step, is a bit of a confession. And some of y'all know I'll make the joke that I always make. You know, I need to confess that I stole your car, I slept with your husband, and I peed on your carpet. And if anyone's wondering, I didn't know such thing. It was linoleum. And so that's sort of how we view the first, or at least the first way we view the word admitted. But I figured we got some Winter Olympics happening. Let's say we all got to fly over to Italy, and we got to go see the ski jump or the hockey or whatever. And we got our Olympic tickets. Now, on our Olympic tickets, it would say admit 1. So another way to look at that word admit is not simply a confession, but also a letting in of God, of ourselves, and of another human being. And that's what we're going to do in the 5th step. We're going to let that light in to the dark parts of ourselves. And I want to point out another human being, because I am sure that you people all showed up to the 5th step and thought, yep, this is great. I'd love to do this. I don't feel like I'm a bag of garbage. But I showed up thinking I'm a bag of garbage. In fact, I thought I was the worst person that ever existed. And actually, I remember my first ever sponsor. She told me that, she said, Paige, there's 2 types of people in the world. There's those that stand on the pile of mess and garbage and pain and suffering they caused, and they're like, yeah, I did that. And that was kind of her, and that was her personality. And then there's the people that hide under the pile of their mess and of the pain and the suffering and think, I can't believe I did that. And that's me. I'm more under the pile, like, oh, don't look too close, you know. But what it's saying with another human being, and it's the truth of the reality of who I am, that I am no better and that I am no worse than any other person. And if you're just listening to me read the steps out of on page 59, I'm sure you're like, girl, I do not believe a word that you are saying. That is fair. But I want you to know that this is my lived experience. You see, it was only after I took that 5th step for the first time that I really began to feel like I was a part of something. But it really was only after I started to receive 5th steps of other alcoholics, that I began to truly feel a part of the human race, a part of humanity. You see, what would happen is I would sit down with another alcoholic, and they would share with me that deep, dark secret, that thing that they did not want to tell another soul, and how I felt about them would change. And not in the way you might expect. You see, I love them more. I love them more. Some of you are new, and welcome. I'm so glad you're here. You don't know this. Well, you've probably gleaned it already. I'm a fall down failure of a human being. I am pissing my pants drunk behind a dumpster. You know, that is who I am on my own power. And I love them more. And if that is how I can feel, a deeply flawed, frequently wrong, silly little drunk, imagine how the spirit of the universe can feel about you. That's what's on offer. But I don't know it until I do it. You know what I'm saying? And then it says, when it says the exact nature of our wrongs. What is the exact nature of our wrongs? Well, it's the exact same thing as our defects of character, which is the exact same thing as our shortcomings. And I'll explain that as I go through 6 and 7. But that's what it is. What we're just trying to see is what is the stuff inside of me that is blocking me from this power? What is inside of me that is blocking me from a power greater than myself? That's no worries. We're just glad you're here. That was a message in the admin chat. Sorry, I'm doing the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain thing. My bad. All right, focus up. So that's what we're trying to see. And then it says in step 6, it says we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. So what am I doing in step 6? It's all about willingness. Now I talk about this quite a lot. Step 6 is prime willingness real estate. I am never more willing than right after I told somebody how these things have ruined my life and the lives of those around me, and right before I go out to make amends for those things. So that tends to be where I am the most willing. But I want to emphasize, it is God that does the removing. Higher power, the creator, the spirit of the universe. That is what removes. And my responsibility is willingness. Now in step 7, it says, humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. And in the original manuscript, it said, humbly on our knees, asked him to remove our shortcomings, holding nothing back. And I am glad they took out the kneeling requirement, because if you don't know, I'm disabled. And so I can get into the kneeling position, but then my prayers really quickly will be like, help, I can't get up, and that's not a place to stay. So we want to stay on topic. I'm just kidding. It's me. Stay on topic. Come on. All right. So when we talk about what is the difference between a defective character, a shortcoming, and the exact nature of my wrongs, the difference is that there is no difference. And Bill Wilson wrote on that. There's a little thing on AA.org that talks about it, that there's no difference. But I also want to point that out in not just taking his word for it, although it's a good word to listen to, but let's have our experience. Because here's my thing. It doesn't make sense to become aware of these things that are blocking me in the 5th step and then become willing for something else to leave me, but then ask a 3rd separate thing to go. Doesn't it make the most sense that I see what's blocking me? I become willing for it to go, and then I ask for it to be removed. I mean, that just follows. But hey, if you're here today and you're like, no, they're different, what I want you to know is you're right and I'm wrong. But I will say I do have a lot of fun over here being wrong. So come and hang out every once in a while. Cool Kids Club, being wrong over here. So step 8. And again, it is God that does the removing. My job is the willingness. And it says, step 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. And the difference in the original manuscript, and that is what Rob is tossing in the chat, is that it said complete amends to them all. So it's like, yikes, that little complete. Ooh, we were talking about step 8 earlier today, and I always like to make the joke. It's about step 8 and 9 that we get the pre-amends digestive issues. Listen, if you're really backed up, you can take an Imodium. I don't know what the UK version is, but you can also go to your local clubhouse and get some AA coffee. That'll get it moving. But nothing works as well as making the amends that you don't want to make. Ooh, that gets it flowing, that the pre-amends digestive issues. And then step 9, it says, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. And I know that nobody here would be lewd, lascivious, or perfidious, but I know I have a time or two. So what happened is when I was living in self, I was causing harm, and I was hurting other people. And I know that I can't live feeling free when I'm still holding on to that guilt and that shame. And steps 8 and 9, they work together, and they allow me to clear away the wreckage of the past, clear away the harms that were caused by the things that I was doing. And here's the most incredible thing. If you're like, Paige, do our defects really get removed from us? Here's my lived experience. When I make amends for them, oh boy, that is the thing that really prevents their repetition, going out and making amends for it. And that process of 4 through 9, That is the engine of Alcoholics Anonymous. That is what drives me from the hopeless condition I find myself in the first step to that place of freedom. And I begin to heal that deep wound at the center of my being. But I cannot stay complacent. I cannot rest on my laurels. So that wound that I've begun to heal and to treat, man, it can grow some spiritual suppuration if I am not continuing to treat it. That infection can grow back. And that's what we continue to do in step 10, 11, and 12. And in step 10, it says continued. Oh man, I thought I only had to do this for a little bit. What do you mean continued? And I showed up here and it said continued. And I did this for, like a year or two, and it keeps saying continued. And then I did it for 5 years and it says continued. And then 10 years and it says continued. And we're a little over 16 and it keeps saying continued. What do you mean? I'm not done? Yeah, this whole thing is a way of life. So continue to take personal inventory. Where did I learn to take inventory? Well, I learned to take inventory in step 4. So that same process that I learned in the 4th step, I don't just dump it. I don't just, stuff it on the shelf. What I do is I continue that process in the 10th step and in the 11th, to be honest with you. And I learned what I need to do with that inventory. And what I need to do with it is I need to share it with somebody in the 5th step. I need to become willing for my defects of character to be removed. And so I have that hour, and that's 6 and 7. And so that process of inventory and what I do with it, that's what I already learned how to do in 4 through 7. And then it says, and when we were wrong, which is, again, I will point out rude, when we were wrong, not if. When? What is the shenanigans, Okay, when I am wrong, and I will say that's the thing, is Alcoholics Anonymous is not expecting me to be perfect. I'm not expected to show up and be like, I have no resentments anymore. I'm all done. No more resentments and no more fears, and I'm done. No, I get to be human. I get to be imperfect. I get to make mistakes. I get to have these moments where the resentments will come, the fears will come. I will act selfishly. I will be dishonest, and I get to make it right. I get to keep it clear. I get to keep it clean. And I get to continue to live this way of life. It's not a punishment. I get given the grace to continue to live free in the here and now. And so it says, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. And where did I learn to make right my wrongs? I learned how to do that in steps 8 and 9. And I will say it's rude that it talks about this being prompt. Promptly. Oh man, got to do that right away. Prompt. Aw. But when we do that, man, it's, that saying, it's better to eat humble pie when it's warm. Oh, that is my experience. Yeah, that doesn't taste good, but it's better to do it than when it's stale. And I've been leaving it for a while. And then in step 11, it says sought. Now there's different levels of seeking. So some of you might have toddlers or a spouse, and the toddler and or spouse is like, where are my socks? And you're like, I set them on your bed. So that is technically one level of seeking. But as we can sort of figure out that that's not a very deep level of seeking. Mom, where's my socks? In the laundry hamper. Where'd they go? So that's one level of seeking. And then there's, like when little kids, if they do the Easter Bunny thing, they'll run around for maybe half an hour before they get bored, and they want to do something else. And that's one level of seeking. But the level of seeking that we're after has to be deeper. It has to be more. It has to be that continued level of seeking. Imagine you had lost, a pet or lost a loved one that went missing. That level of seeking where I'm going to be seeking every single day. And it says sought through prayer and meditation. And I don't know if your book is different than mine. I was reading it and or meditation for a long, long time. And or meditation because I thought that was optional. But it's prayer and meditation. And this is one of the things I talk about quite a lot. A lot of times we might hear, oh, if you look up meditation in the 1930s dictionary, I do have one of those, and I do look things up in the dictionary. Meditation didn't mean meditating, it meant thinking. They didn't meditate in the 1930s. And that is true only if the only work that I do to look into that is looking it up in the 1930s dictionary. That's the only way that that's true. In this book, we only have one book that is specifically referenced, and that book is Varieties of Religious Experiences. And in that book, it talks about a variety of meditative practices that existed throughout like the early days and throughout the 1930s that did exist. And a lot of times those meditative practices were under the name prayer. And so I got some news, gotta pray, gotta meditate. Oh man. But I do promise it gets easier the more we do it. And then it says, sought through prayer and meditation to improve. Improve. And you know what is rude about that? There's not a glass ceiling, improve until your sponsor gives you a little gold star, which, I've never gotten one of those from a sponsor, but I have given those out to sponsees because I'm fun. That is subjective. But oh man, I have to keep doing it, keep improving, keep seeking. And again, if I'm not doing this, that does not sound like fun. But when I begin to live this way of life, when I begin to experience the freedom, the joy, that's when I get to realize I can get more. There's more that I get to experience. There's more that I get to see. So it says to improve our conscious contact with God. The word conscious is Latin in its etymological origin. Now, in step 2, the chapter that is dedicated to the second step is titled We Agnostics. Agnostic is Greek in its etymological origin. See, I'm so much fun. Nothing like an etymology tangent. We're still on page 59. I know, I'll help you write inventory on me. But agnostic is Greek. And in Greek, ag means without, and gnosis means knowledge. But it doesn't mean that head knowledge. When your sponsor tells you to do something and you're like, yeah, I know. And then they tell you to do the same thing again and you're like, yeah, I know. And then they keep bringing it up. You know why? It's because I'm not doing it. It's because I don't really know. But we're not talking about that type of knowledge. The gnosis is very specifically a spiritual knowledge. It is a heart level knowing. And what's incredible is going back to what we're supposed to be talking about in step 11, which says conscious contact. It's Latin, the word conscious. Completely different language root. But con in Latin means with, and shus, which is sire, means knowing. So at the second step, I don't have any experiential knowing of this power, and I'm not expected to. But as the result of this course of action, as the result of these 12 steps, I begin to have this with knowing, this heart level experience of this power. And that's what I'm after. Now, to be fair, I say that when I got here, that's not what I was after. I just didn't want to feel the way that I was feeling. But if I don't want to feel the way that I was feeling, if I don't want to go back to that first drink again and again and again, this is what I need. That heart level experience, that transformation from the inside out. So conscious contact with God as we understood him. Now, I will be referencing my 1930s dictionary. I know. Please come back. But in my 1930s, thank you, I appreciate it. In my 1930s dictionary, it talks about the word understand. And that word means to know through experience. So I don't need to figure out this God or a higher power between my ears, because that is frustrating and I cannot do it. I get to experience this power through the actions that I take. Now at the 11th step, I'm beginning and I'm experiencing this power. At this point, I'm in that fourth dimension. I'm beginning to really live there. And it says praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. You know, it's so funny. We are, and I do this too. I'm not judging anyone, but it's like I come to this place in step 1 where I realize I have no power. And actually, that is a series of surrenders that I make. A surrender I make in step 2, a surrender I make in step 3, surrenders I make in step 4. This crescendo of my powerlessness. In each case, grace like flows in to counteract that powerlessness. But that realization that I am a finite being, I have no power, and there is an infinite power that is available. And I'm like, here's what I want you to do. Listen, I've got some plans. You know, I know nobody has ever treated God like a vending machine. All right, B6, like a boyfriend, give me one of those. I would like a new job, you know, as opposed to, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that, you know, but the orientation that it is alluding to is, what would you have me do? Where would you have me be? Who do I need to be dating? Because it's probably different than Mr. Grippy Socks. Hey, and it's no judgment. We had a matching pair. But that's the orientation that I'm after. Praying only for knowledge of his will for it and the power to carry that out. Because if I don't have the power, I need access to the power. But more than that, I can have a relationship with the power. And that, man, that is something that is incredible. And again, if you're new here today, you don't have to, you just got to believe that there are people who have better things to do than lie about their experience. I know it's a hard sell that I have better things to do. But there are other people, like Rob definitely has better things to do. Like Rob can have he's got hobbies, you know that? It's delightful. You know, there's hockey to watch and all of that. But you're like, no, she doesn't got it. But if you can believe somebody like Rob, somebody like Peppa, somebody like Neil, that they have better things to do than show up and lie about their experience, that's all I need to begin. Now, top of page 60, step 12. And the 12th step is broken down into 3 parts. The first is having had a spiritual awakening as the result. And yes, in the original manuscript, it said, hold on, I gotta find it on, that's how you can tell you're getting old, when you start looking at something like, Rob put it in the chat. I could just looked in the chat. Having had a spiritual experience is the result of this course of action. We tried to carry this message to others, especially alcoholics, and to practice these principles in all our affairs. So the 12th step, however it's written, original manuscript or otherwise, it kicks off with a promise. And that promise is that if I take this course of action, if I work these steps out of this book, if I give this my best go, the result that I will have is a spiritual awakening. Now, if you don't believe me, well, I hope we can trust Ebby Thatcher. I know if you're like, who the heck is Ebby Thatcher? Let's pop over to page 13, and we're going to go to the very bottom paragraph, because it is the same promise that Ebby Thatcher made to Bill Wilson, and Bill Wilson is making to us. And that promise is not a hollow promise. That promise is our lived experience. Bottom of page 13. It said, my friend promised, it's a promise, when these things were done. So I have to do them, which is rude. It is rude that's how that is. After I take this course of action, after I write an inventory, after I share my 5th step, after I do the quiet hour, after the 6 and 7, after my amends, after, that's the course of action. After, when these things were done, I would enter upon a new relationship with my Creator, a new relationship. And I really jive with that relational view of a power greater than myself. If you don't worry about it, that's okay. But that idea of like, I can build a relationship, and any relationship that we have in our lives takes action and it takes consistency. And it says that I would have the elements of a way of living. Oh man, this is a way of life, but a way of life which answered all my problems. And so that promise that was made to Bill Wilson by Ebby Thatcher is being made to us on page 60. That if I give these things my best go, I will have a spiritual awakening. I will have a spiritual experience. I will have a psychic change. That is available to me. And I'm going to point something out. The 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous are alcoholic proof. They have to be. They're for alcoholics. So you're not so alcoholic, you can mess them up. Just going to throw that. That's one of those hills that I die on. So that's the first part on page 60, a promise that if I do this, if I give this my best go, that this experience will happen for me and happen to me. And then it said, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics. So what are we talking about? We're talking about 12-step work. We're trying to help other people take these 12 steps themselves, to help them walk through this course of action as it is outlined in this book, to take their hand and put it in the hand of their higher power. That's what we do. And if I want that permanent contented sobriety, I have found that I've got to work with others. I've got to sponsor. Now, the word sponsor is not found in the first 164 pages, but I will say the job description, it is all over it. It's all over the place. So that's part 2, that I carry this message, that I sponsor others, that I take them through this work, these 12 steps, and I help them help others. And then it talks about, and to practice these principles in all our affairs. What are the principles? Well, we just read them. The principles are for me, the tangible actions of the 12 steps. So the 12 steps are not a thing that I practice in between the prayers of a meeting, but they're what I practice in how I live outside of the prayers of a meeting, in all areas of my life, that we bring this to all areas of my life. That's what it's talking about. Not we have affairs, because hey, in the 4th step, we're supposed to have a look at that sex conduct. I'm just kidding. Just making a little ha-ha. So that's what we do. And it tells us in 10, 11, 12, continued, improve all our affairs, that this is a way of life. So hopefully I have not ruined everyone's day, but I've worked with people where it's like, what do you mean I got to keep writing inventory? What do you mean? I know things pop up, life happens, I'm human. And this, what we're, now what we're diving into is, just another beautiful example of how the book meets us where we're at and takes us where we need to go. See, they're not expecting us to show up and to read these 12 steps and think, oh, that sounds great. Because nobody here came to the rooms and saw the steps on the wall or shared on the Zoom screen or tossed into the chat and thought, that sounds lovely. I can't wait to do that. No, we all, okay, not all, but I mean all, we all did that thing where we audit the steps, that one, some of that one, none of that one, ew, gross, to my ex, no thank you, I'm not doing that one, you know what I mean? Like, we audit them, we all do, and so the book is not expecting me to be like, I can't wait to make amends, 5th step, that sounds delightful, I love meditating, no, it's meeting us where we're at, and it's going to take us where we need to go. And if that's what this book can do, is it possible? Is it possible that that is what God does as well? Meets us where we're at and will take us where we need to go. So it says, many of us exclaimed, what an order! I can't go through with it. And that is to exclaim. That is with some emphasis. Like, no! Oh gosh, no! And as I go through this common reading, how it works, it's read at almost every meeting, I point out different iterations. So Rob and I have been talking about the original manuscript, but I also talk about YPAW. And if you're not familiar, YPAW is Young People of AA. And there's different YPAW groups all over the world. And when How It Works is read at like a YPAW conference, members will yell out different call outs. And I love the ones that are at this part of the book. So when it says, many of us exclaim, what an order! I can't go through with it. The crowd will yell out, I'm so discouraged. And it says, do not be discouraged. Do not be discouraged. No one among us has been able to maintain anything like perfect adherence to these principles. None of us is going to do this perfectly. We are all going to make mistakes. We are all going to have moments of complacency. We are human beings. That's what it's saying. And then if we were at a YPAW group, what they would yell is, but we're saints. We are not saints. What's the point? The point is that we are willing to grow along spiritual lines. And then people would say lines, outside issues. And then some people would go outside tissues and throw unused tissues, because that's fun. I point out unused because if you're like, ooh, it's cold and flu season, no thank you, but when it talks about we are not saints, there is a gentleman and his name is Thomas Merton. And on one of the many 12-step related apps, there's a prayer and it's known as the Thomas Merton prayer. And in that prayer, it talks about how I may not know the road ahead of me. I may not know the right way to go, but I hope that with my heart, I will be seeking to do your will. And if I do that, I know that everything's going to be okay. I'm summarizing it. I'm not doing it verbatim. And so that's just an entry point to this guy. And he was a religious fella. That's the correct terminology, a religious fella. But he was a religious fella. And he spoke about the concept of sainthood. And I thought his description of sainthood, there's the full prayer, not vibed by me. But he spoke about, I think, one of the best descriptions of sainthood. And that description of sainthood was to be the truest versions of ourselves, which is to say, to become the person that God wanted us to be. Another way to say that is to be the person that I always wanted to be, but never thought I could be. That is a beautiful description of sainthood. And that feels doable. And actually, I'll tell you this, I'll go on a tangent. I know, I'm shocked. Oh man, I didn't grab it. I used to joke around, cause when I would show up, being disabled and, people were like, oh, Paige, you're so great. And then I would respond, not the best way, with sarcasm. And I'd be like, I know, I'm a saint. Put me on a dollar store candle. I actually had a sponsee that did that. Put me on a dollar store candle. And actually the best part about it was, she got an email from the person that made it. It was like, hey, I've got some news. Your order is going to be a little delayed. I sent it out for shipping and the package got stolen. So there's somebody out there in the world with a candle with my face on it. And so I know. So I have that candle. Have not lit it. I don't think that highly of myself. But I used to joke about, oh yeah, I'm a saint. Put me on a dollar store candle. And I remembered this one time I was coming into a place of meditation. I was doing my morning meditation. And what came to me was sort of that joking about, dollar store candle, because, your mind wanders. But then what came to me is, I don't want to be a saint. What I want is to live my life so that the people that I get to help and the people that I come into contact with, that they get to be saints, that they get to be the truest versions of themselves, who God would have them be, who they wanted to be all along. And that was a cool little reframe. But we are not saints. So what's the point? The point is we are willing to grow along spiritual lines and growth. Spiritual growth is the name of the game in Alcoholics Anonymous. That is the point. Am I growing spiritually? How am I growing spiritually? And I can ask myself that in the here and now. And hey, if the answer is like no, in fact, if the answer is no, I'm spiritually regressing, that's okay. But it tells us what we need to do. How am I growing spiritually? Am I growing spiritually? And the spiritual lines are the 12 steps. That is how we are growing. That's how we get spiritual. It's not like and listen, if you want to go get crystals, I'm pro crystals, unless it's meth, then I would advise against that. But if you want to read books and do all that stuff, do it. I if you want to seek you and grow in your 11th step, absolutely. There's so much fun that can be had. But how we grow, how we get to that place of spirituality, that is the purpose of the 12 steps. I don't have to get spiritual to work the steps. The spirituality comes as I take this course of action. And it says, so the point is that we're willing to grow along spiritual lines. Then it says the principles we have set down. And again, for me, the principles are the actions of the 12 steps. And I talk about that because for me, that was helpful. Because I don't know about you, when you're a little overstimulated and you're running late and you spill your coffee and you're stuck in traffic, I don't know where tolerance comes from, but I can't find it on me. You know what I mean? I don't got it. And I can't pull that tolerance out of thin air. But here's what I can do. I can pause, I can pray, I can utilize the 10th step, and I can get back to that God-centered place. And, when I'm terrified to take a spiritual action, man, I don't know, where'd the courage go? I don't got it. But here's what I can do. I can, again, utilize like the fear inventory, do a 10th step fear prayer, and take that action. And that's what I can do. So it goes on to say, the principles we have set down are guides to progress. Now, progress, I have a university degree. I mean, barely, it's DeVry, but I have a university degree. And one of the few things that I is the original word progress just meant movement. It didn't even mean forward progress. It just meant movement. And so when it talks about, guides to progress, this progress is meant to be one based in action and doing. And the irony of that is it is often in those moments of calm and peace where the change happens to me. But I got to take the action to have moments of calm and peace and to put myself in a position to receive that. So it goes on to say, we claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. And this is one of the hills that I die on. I'm not super de-duper pedantic, but I have been known to pedant a time or two. And as Brian knows and Kathy knows, I pedant with purpose. And so this is one of the few places I am pedantic. Oftentimes in the rooms we hear, it is progress, not perfection. And I'm like, nope. And I don't actually correct people. I'm not that obnoxious. I'm an over here contained obnoxious, but I'm not, I'm not spreading it. But so I don't correct them. But the idea is that it is spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection, not progress, not perfection. Because that external progress could not keep me sober. And how often do we come to the rooms, we put down the drink and we get maybe the car back. We get the driver's license back. And sometimes that's the order. We're like, I got the car, but I don't have the license. No judgment. We get the relationship back. We get the job back. We start, putting on some healthy weight, or we stop being so swollen, and we start getting some of those external things back. And those are gifts of sobriety, but they are not recovery itself. And none of those had the power to keep us sober. So while it is wonderful if you got a nice job, amazing, or you go back to school, phenomenal, I want that for you. Or, you get to get back into the marital bed as opposed to the couch, great. But that did not have the power to keep us sober. How am I progressing spiritually? How am I growing spiritually? That is what matters. That's what keeps me sober and allows me to continue to have and receive those external gifts and blessings. And when it talks about spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection, there is a religious definition of the word perfection, which is to be in a state without sin. Now, if the word sin hits you in a place and you're like, ew, yikes. The word sin was also an archery term, and it simply meant to miss the mark. To not hit the target. That's what it meant. But the Oxford group, they had a wonderful description of what sin is, which is, for our purposes, let's just say defects of character, but a beautiful description of sin through the Oxford group lens. And again, feel free to not use that word if that word has too much baggage for you. And understandably so. But it means anything that blocks me from you and blocks me from God. Anything that is coming between me and you and me and God, because that's what I got to get free of. That's what I got to get removed. And when we talk about that, we claim spiritual progress, so spiritual growth rather than spiritual, I am free of all my defects of character. That's what spiritual perfection would be. And y'all know that's not happening over here. So that's what we're talking about. And again, the grace to be imperfect, because it is often those defects of character that drive me back to God, that allow me to seek a deeper experience through these 12 steps. It goes on to say, our description of the alcoholic. The chapter to the agnostic, so the description of the alcoholic was in grave detail in More About Alcoholism, and we saw some description in there as a solution as well. The description of the alcoholic is allergy of the body, obsession of the mind, but spoken about, in those chapters. Description of the alcoholic, which is step 1 information. The chapter to the agnostic, which is step 2 information. And our personal adventures. Now, I know you guys would never have ever minimized your alcoholism, but I did a time or two. And it's like, no, I was just going on adventures, little Miss Indiana Jones over here. Whee! It's the Raiders of the Lost, 2-6. That's what it was. Is that not? No? Okay. So our personal adventures before and after make clear 3 pertinent ideas. And so what it's saying, the information on step 1, the information on step 2, and us holding this book up as a mirror to our lived experience. That is making clear for us 3 pertinent ideas. Now, pertinent idea number 1 is that we were alcoholic and could not manage our own life. Now, that is a step 1 proposition, a step 1 idea. The step 1 I get to hold up, is this me? That is a step 1 proposition. Then it says that probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism. And I'm throwing a curveball to some of y'all, and I apologize. That is also a step 1 proposition. Because if a human power was sufficient, then I could just do that. I could just hold on to that human power. He'll fix me, she'll fix me, the whatever it is, like the institution that I'm grabbing a hold on, it'll fix me, the therapy will fix me, and I'm pro-therapy, I'm not anti-therapy, but I'm throwing out, if it was enough, then I could just do that. And that realization that I am beyond human aid is a step 1 realization. Then it goes on to say, see that God could and would if he were sought. And that is a step 2 proposition, that there is a power, and this power could and can and will if I am willing to seek. And how do we seek these 12 steps? That is a second step proposition. And we know that to be true because it's saying, all right, now we're at step 3. I can believe this, I can believe this, I can believe this. Boom, let's start talking about step 3. And in the original manuscript, now they took the original manuscript was a lot more direct, just a little, a lot more direct and a lot more like you. And we all know we love being told what to do, and we love it when people are like, you gotta, because we respond so well to that. So they softened it. But in the original manuscript, it said, if you are not convinced of these 3 vital issues, you ought to reread the book until this point or else toss it away. And so it's probably good they took it out. Although I do think that might have increased sales, throw away the book and then like, man, I can't stay sober. Maybe I got to get another copy, but we're here to help drunks, not sell books. So it's good. It is good they took it out. But what it is to say, if I'm struggling with the 3rd step decision, it is often an issue with an understanding of the first step. And so that's what we can glean from that. And so, 225 or 925, whatever it is in the UK. That's not bad. I'm going to give you some time. So next week, what we're going to do is we're going to dive in and we're going to talk all about step 3. So please join us. And don't worry, if you're not convinced of these 3 vital issues, you don't got to throw anything out. Just keep coming. Just keep coming. All right, I'll toss it over to Peppa. All right.